It's Neil Atkinson with Mel Reddy in Waterstones. I want to be crystal clear. It is ridiculously hot. So if I, in particular, Mel will always look glamorous as anything, but if I look like a man who's about to melt, that is the reason why. There is some air conditioning here as we get ourselves settled in. I've stupidly gone for warm mint tea. Mel's got the sense of ice, I know. I just saw it, I quite like mint tea when I sit down. I went from there. The book is Only Mo Salah. It is by Melissa Reddy, an intimate portrait of the Egyptian king. We have it here. We'll be doing an event later on in Waterstones. But I want to start where you start in the book, Mel, which is to deal with Salah's last 2 years. You know, I think there's a really strong argument in every sense for him personally, professionally, for the team. In a way, his best year at Liverpool is 24-25, and then obviously I think his worst year at Liverpool is 25-26. So let's start with the positives really of 24-25, and I'm always struck the way you have it in the book that the way Salah was used in that season was very much a collaboration between him and the manager, and arguably a collaboration that he led.
Yeah, so in their initial conversations actually centered around Salah's defensive work. Slot really wanted him to nail that down. And Salah, as he does every summer, he goes away, he reflects, he thinks about his game, like what else can I add to it? You know, we saw those outside of the boot shots that he'd come up with.
And through balls.
Yes, and the through balls. So he'd spent a lot of time reflecting on his attacking game and new weaponry to add. And he said to Slot, I actually think if we focus even less on the defensive side and empower me, I will create and I'll score and I'll carry this team in an attacking sense. And so they talk it through and Slot agrees. They find solutions of how it can work by making sure other players are covering and doing their defensive diligence. And the interesting thing about it is it's not just Salah's best season, but if you look at Luis Diaz's numbers and Cody Gakpo's numbers, Salah makes them better when he's platformed as well. So you get this sense of, in his head, coming off that season, signs his new contract, that's going to be further enhanced. This case of, right, you're our very best player, but you also still make everyone else better, which obviously doesn't end up being the case.
But what's interesting this season, and you talk about it, he finds this when he's in Italy, in order to, as part of this process of constant improvement, to refine his game. You talk about him starting to really get into things like techniques like visualization. And then you talk in the book that he visualizes the league title. And one of the things that I think is really fascinating to me about 24-25, Salah actually doesn't score that many first goals or goals in the first half. It's his contribution in the second half when I think he's been able to rest through the game a little bit more because of not doing the defensive work. But there's almost, when I read the book, I was reflecting on this almost supernatural calm about him at key moments. Suddenly finds himself with a decent opportunity with 20 minutes to go to kill the game, and he just calmly finishes. And you know, that idea of him changing or reflecting or vision, and he says he visualised the league title. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, he did. And the thing that's so extraordinary is obviously he does the review of the season prior where he says, you know, I'm devastated, I want to win titles, we should be winning, I'll do everything in my power. And then pre-season starts and he has a conversation with Trent, with Robbo, with Ali, with Verge, and he says, look at how everyone's talking about us. They say, because Jurgen's gone, that's us done.
Yeah.
But let's prove them wrong. Like, we're not. Let's show them. Let's carry this team like we're the senior players. We have to do it. Let's win the league title. And it's this sheer conviction in him that he has that you will actually find throughout his career, which is remarkable because he wants something that bad and he visualizes it that bad that then he does everything within his power to make that thing happen, because now it's so ingrained in him, right? Yeah. And then he brings the senior players along on that journey. And I think, again, what's devastating for him is the thought that he wants to win another. Like, we're not done, we're not finished, we can go again. Especially in the sense of, I think he wanted to add another Champions League title for Liverpool. But it's just a fascinating development where obviously the outside world is like, oh, Jurgen is going to be such a huge miss to this football club and can slot really seamlessly, transition, take this role. It's so different to the Dutch league. How is he going to handle everything? And you've got Mo Salah saying, no lads, let's just go and win it.
That sense of leadership from him, I've always been long fascinated by. You know, there's leadership's a complicated thing.
Yeah.
There's leaders who lead by example. There's leaders who hector. There's leaders who will be critical in order to get results. There's leaders who will be supportive. It seems like from the outside, Salah was very much someone who wanted to be there for his teammates, especially as he grew older. I think he grows into that role of leadership, and by the time Jurgen goes, he is in a position to assume that mantle.
There's a very interesting element through leadership, because Virgil van Dijk said he's one of the people I count on, you know, and Robbo as well. I'm such a great captain because I have these people. And the players were saying they're very different personalities. So Van Dijk is very much, hey, these are the standards, these are the rules, and Mo is the person when you have an issue or you're not feeling okay or something's gone wrong. And I'll use the Harvey Elliott example. He's having a really bad time at Aston Villa, and the person he speaks to about it and confides in and looks for encouragement and empathy is Mohamed Salah. So it's, you know, leadership, as you say, comes in many forms, but the other way in which he leads is that it is non-negotiable that Liverpool win. Like that is, he hated when people would describe Liverpool as underdogs. It's like, no, well, underdogs where? No.
Yep.
We should be seen as a team that does win, that wants to win, that will always win. That's who we are. That's who we should be. I need references to the players all the time. So I think there's that element of him leading as well, in that he makes everyone believe that, yeah, actually, we can and we will get a trophy.
There's a few times I've always cited the remarkable image, I think, of Salah after the end of the 21-22 season, when he'd again been fans back in grounds, utterly determined to win a league title. Season finishes and he wins the Golden Boot and he wins the Playmaker Award, and he's got the two of them and he's in tears because Liverpool haven't won.
Exactly.
And that, to me, he's always wanted the mantle, pretty much almost since the day he arrived, of I will carry the club insofar as I can with my goal scoring, but my goal scoring doesn't mean anything if it doesn't lead to the silverware, and that was always what he was about.
That is, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions about him, that he does care about his numbers, but he cares about his numbers because if he's getting those numbers, he knows it means he's giving Liverpool a really, really good chance of winning silverware. When he gets the numbers but no silverware, I mean, that image, and I need people to actually go back and look at it, he is absolutely devastated, mortified, and he can't even hide
literally
it.
Holding two trophies.
And he can't even hide it. And you can even see that he's like trying to when you watch the video of it, he's trying to force a smile and it's just not coming. He can't hide how devastated he is.
With the way in which obviously it changes, I think there's different phases to what goes on, and I think you break them down within the book. The first thing to point out is that Liverpool have decided that they need to anticipate the whole Salah is going to leave.
Yeah.
They have also decided, and I think this is a different phase, and I think it's important, the Broken, to go back to analyse the 25 summer properly. They've also decided that they, as part of that, also want to move a couple of his existing teammates on as well. And I think they're two different phases. They're interconnected, don't get me wrong. Liverpool have got to raise some funds for the money that they're spending, but they've made these decisions. And then the third thing that happens, that's obviously outside of everyone's control, is the tragedy of what happens with Diogo. And those three things over the course of that summer, before even a ball is kicked, I think make this summer and the way 25-26 would have been for Liverpool, even if it had gone well, exceptionally difficult. Is that fair? And I think that's very much what you try to put over in the book.
Yeah, I think that is fair. And Liverpool, ultimately, as a first port, have to do what's right for the football club, right? Yeah. And long-term planning, because of Mohamed Salah's age and because of the fact that you are actually in essence changing the look of the attack by letting some of his teammates go, and you have to think about the future, it makes sense to bring in players that you think in the post Mohamed Salah world are going to deliver for you. And the interesting thing is, Salah's all-timer season makes it impossible for them not to give him that new contract. As we know historically from Liverpool, they prefer not to hand out that contract.
Yeah.
Sadio Mane didn't get it, Roberto Firmino didn't get it. It's just not a thing they do because they want to be looking forward and moving forward. So then they're put in this position where they are looking forward and planning forward and spending a lot of money to do that, while also spending a lot of money to keep Mohamed Salah. You've got two competing things there because they don't run on the same train. One has proven if you platform him, he will win you titles. The others need a reconfiguration of how the team plays in order to deliver.
Yeah.
And then you have the other element, like you say, of the tragedy of Jota, which means the new players coming in, bless them, excited to sign for Liverpool, and they come into a space that is a grief centre, ultimately. The AXA is not a training centre. It was a place for people to congregate and share what they felt and their coping strategies and how they would move forward. So they are in a very difficult position because they don't want to feel like they're imposing or they feel uncomfortable, right? Because he wasn't their teammate. And then you have people who were his teammate who are feeling everything at an absolutely heightened degree, of which Salah is a very emotional man anyway.
Yeah.
And now this is an incredibly emotional thing, as we saw at the end of the Bournemouth game, where he just can't hold it in. And so all these things are happening simultaneously to create just, I think, an untenable situation for everyone, including, by the way, Slot.
Well, I mean, the book is very kind to Slot, given the fact that obviously your sympathies very much do lie with Salah. You know, he's a man that you adore and admire, same as I do. But it's striking to me that you go out of your way repeatedly to be clear about what is not Slot's responsibility, what it is that Slot can't control. We have to be honest. I think Slot gets dealt in the end last season a really poor hand, and then doesn't play it as well as he could in hindsight. I think that's all a perfectly valid position. But it is worth saying, isn't it, that a lot of what happens around the season, Slot is almost, if you said, in a way, it almost feels more insulting, and I don't mean to be insulting, he's almost a little bit of a bystander to a lot of what's going on around Mo that you detail within the book. Yeah,
it feels like he's having to be in a reactive position. So all these decisions are taken. He played a big part in the recruitment. He wanted the technical players. And if you go back, from February, they'd already been having conversations with like Ekatiké's people, like all the moves that were happening, they knew that was going to come. So there was a very clear anticipation of, we're replacing Salah's output and we're keeping Salah, so something's got to give there. How do we make that work? Yet, he came in and he developed this great relationship with Mo. Very, very strong relationship, open, speaking about tactics all the time, speaking about lots of other things about like their family life or things to do and other players and who's struggling or how can we help or all those kind of facets. And suddenly he's in a situation where he can't have that relationship anymore because he has to not platform Mo, and he has to try and find a way to make Mo understand that he's just going to have to play further away from goal, and he's going to have to do his defensive diligence, and he's going to have to play with 5 or 6 different right backs behind him. So naturally, when you know that this is what you're having to deal with, the relationship changes because I now can't be friendly with him because I have to treat him in a completely different way than I was treating him. And the Jota stuff, there's no manual. No manager should ever have to deal with it and should ever need to know how to deal with it. And I think he does in that regard, the absolute best from a human level that is possible. In a way, I feel a lot of sympathy for him because he's come in, he's seamlessly won the league, but at the start, he says himself, he wins the league because the team is not changed. The standards haven't changed. All of that is inbuilt in them. And all that is ripped apart. And you have so many new things in a very delicate situation that's riddled by grief, with your best player now no longer needing to contribute in the way he did. But you've not communicated that to anyone in the outside world. You've not said he's no longer our main goal scorer and our chief creator. And that just creates all the chaos.
Well, that's what I think what Salah himself found difficult, and difficult in both a doubly private sense. One, just private to himself. Secondly, training ground private, working with the team private, working with the manager private. And then in the public sense as well. I was always struck by, when you reflect back on the 24-25 season, for me, one of the most important goals, Salah goals, but goals full stop, is the equaliser at the Emirates. When Trent's tried to play a ball 15 minutes earlier, it's not come off, but he tries it again. And both Salah and Nunez at first go for the same ball. And then Nunez basically says to Salah, I'll get this. And Nunez breaks his back to get there first. Salah just goes between the sticks. Nunez passes to him and falls over whilst doing so. And Salah just converts in that way where he's just so calm. It's a massive game, it's a massive moment, but Mo Salah passes it into the corner because that's what he does.
Yeah.
All of that was ripped away from Mo.
Yes.
And Mo can't publicly come out and say, he tries to a couple of times, but he can't publicly come out and say, all of this has been ripped away from me, on the one hand.
Yeah.
And no one at Liverpool is saying, and all of this has been ripped away from Mo, when he's not sticking it in the back of the net.
Yeah. I think people, when he had that outburst at Leeds, they mistake it for so many things that it's not. They think his issue is that he's been on the bench. They think his issue is that he wants to get slot sacked. Ultimately, the thrown under the bus, the scapegoat is, why has the club not communicated that my role has changed, that my responsibilities have changed, that what they expect from me has changed, that the circumstances around me and the team and the essence and how it was built has changed? I can no longer be that player because they're not using me as that player anymore. But no one is saying anything. So you're allowing people to say my legs have gone, that I shouldn't have gotten the contract, that I'm useless, that what's the point of even having me, like I should be out the squad. All these things, and it's in his head, it's just like he's listening to the stuff every day of all these criticisms, and he's thinking, why is no one saying,
yeah,
we don't want Mo to be that player anymore because look, we signed our main goal scorer and we signed our chief creator, so Mo is neither of those things.
As part of that, I mean, I'm still struck by, to use that sort of thing about his own calm and I suspect his own visualisation, the way in which his final goal for Liverpool just so calmly slotted to the Hill Dickinson to open the score in the derby, as though he really had spent the week before thinking, I'm just going to get a chance and I'm going to bury it as soon as it comes. And that was still there, and that was also, it felt like that was the plan of attack that day as well. By the way, it's interesting that is, rather than be Salah to Gakpo, that one was Gakpo to Salah. Isak's actually played in that game. It's good movement to pull him out, and then he's still there to finish. There is a thing, Mel, that I have wondered whether or not for him personally, and only he could answer it really, we can speculate. But I remember Gerrard in 13-14, and then he's not the same player in 14-15 because he gave everything in 13-14 at the age he was at. I think there is a thing for Mo where he gives so much in 24-25, and then everything that goes on in the summer and all the disruption, it almost couldn't have come as a worse time. You know, if there had been continuity, he could have refound his level over a period. Instead, he gets the absolute opposite. It's the worst type of disruption. It's horrible. It's personal. It's, you know, he's lost friends, literally lost friends in a permanent way, lost friends out the club. And then he just looks like a player who can't get himself back. And a big part of that as well is, as you say, and he's also saying to himself, but no one's helping me.
Yeah.
And I think that becomes, for me, what is quite striking in this period that we now talk about, the almost the sad period, is he looks as though he could just do with some people helping him a little bit, and then every now and again Viet's plays him a good ball and he hits the post at Chelsea. I was like, oh no. And that calm that we talk about, that calm's gone. I think you can see it's gone from his face. Is that fair?
I think that is fair, especially, like you say, he gave so much, right, to fulfill his promise of we're going to win silverware. And then the grief that hits has a physical toll, I think, on everyone.
Yep.
Because
Just
that's
off
just
pre-season.
yeah. And also when you have something weighing on you so heavily in a mental capacity, it's been proven that it will affect your physical capacity. And that I think if the team had stayed the same and those situations happen, I think you still see the Mo Salah, maybe not to the extent and to the numbers, but I still think you're seeing a 35 or 30 goal contribution through assists and himself scoring. But that there's so much change, not just in personnel, but to how he is being used, and the grief, and the fact that he expended so much energy, and now you're actually expending even further, not even when you're on the pitch, just trying to think, how do I fit in here? How do I try and... I think he actually says, I need to spend time analysing where Flo wants to put the ball, where Flo needs me to be, and what I need to do to work with Egpytian and stuff. One of the other things I want to say as well is, I think people would say, oh, he doesn't like the new player, he's got a bad relation. No, he got on really well with them. There was nothing of, Liverpool have signed these players and I'm angry. The frustration comes because they cannot work to make, like I said, those two competing trains run in unison.
Yeah.
Because it's just very difficult to do that. And in order, you mentioned Darwin, and the one thing Darwin was exceptional at was being in service, giving everything of himself to be in service to Mo, to be in service to Liverpool. And Diaz was similar in that respect. But now you had Mo on the halfway line and he has to pass the ball to Flo because now it's Flo's duty to go. And he's no longer that person that people are to make things happen. He is now the one who has to give it to others to make things happen. And I think that was a hard thing because when he is doing it, it's not working.
Yeah.
The output that got replaced just never came. And one of the schools of thought is that Liverpool never ever say, well, we're not expecting him to be that player anymore. Because if the new signings didn't work, they needed him to be that player. However, there wasn't a way to use him to be that player because he was so far removed from goal.
And there wasn't the personnel, and these, as you said before, there's 6 different right backs, and that takes some time. Listen, I want to go back to the start, jump all the way back to Nagrig, to where he grew up, but also the work that now he does in those communities that, or when I say now, has done through his professional career, and especially when he's had all the success at Liverpool. It is, worth saying he has given a lot back to Nagrig. You've got a list of some of it in the book. You don't even think your own list is complete. I think you find out more bits and pieces all the time of stuff that he's done. Yeah. But for instance, funding girls' schools, all sorts of establishments and investments on the social side. This is stuff that he's chosen to do and wanted to do since he's been in a position to do it financially. Yeah,
the list will never ever be complete because actually, culturally, you're not allowed to speak about your charity. And people, the only reason we know a lot of stuff is because they've wanted to thank him because also giving thanks is part of the culture. So there's like this competing thing. But the amount, Nagrig as a village could not function in its modern without the funding he's given it to it. So it would always just be like farmlands. But he's given it an educational hub, a medical hub, like facilities that day to day improve people's lives. There's all-weather pitches, so there can be a stream of talent coming out of there because obviously every little boy now, and a lot of little girls, by the way, having seen Maka run through and score on the Kop, want to be footballers because they think now that there is that possibility open to them. And it stretches beyond there. It goes to Egypt, to Palestine, to the amount of stuff he's done that will never be made public and that will so far outweigh people wanting him to like put a tweet out or to say something. Money where it's actually being used for aid, where it's actually being used to treat victims, where it's being used to provide hope and opportunities, is extraordinary. And the thing for me is, it's not just about financial incentives that he's done. From his first European move, he's sitting there saying, I want to change the perception of Egyptian players. I want to create a pathway. I want to have this responsibility of showing people that they can be something else. They can make something of their lives. They don't just have to be stuck in social and political strife. And he goes and does it. And just by being himself, he has given people the ability to be proud of their identity. They don't have to conceal any bit of their faith. They can, like him, be unapologetic about it. And that is such a huge thing. It's mad.
But within that, I think this is where the sort of the complexity of his own sense of identity, I think, is enormous, and also his intellectual curiosity. You know, he's intrigued by the world. He's open to experiences. I'm always entertained by the Christmas tree. I always will be. It is something that he is just committing to, and he's not going to stop. There is with him, I think, this difficulty. It's not easy to be Mo Salah because of the things that you've just said, because of where that becomes a laborious process, where you are deemed to represent so much. You've got a line in there that, you know, in what was almost certainly an unfair election, he arguably comes second because so many people write his name in. That is a pressure that a few other footballers globally have had, and some have risen to it even further. Players like George Weah and Didier Drogba have ended up with forms of political offers. But very, very, I mean, on the front cover here, you've got a quote from Steven Gerrard. Stephen had a lot to worry about, but he didn't have to worry about that.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the things that sort of underpins how difficult it is. And in your portrait of Salah, putting that over is so important, and you do a really fantastic job within there.
I asked a question, who's the most important footballer in the world? And a lot of the reactions were Leo Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo. And I think people conflate importance with popularity, Ronaldo, and talent, Messi. Importance is your impact, your influence, are you changing people's lives? What do you stand for? What do you represent? All of this. And when I reference there that he's made so many people just feel comfortable to be themselves by him being him, that in itself is enormous. But when you consider culturally things that he wasn't able to say but did and stood up for, women's rights, advocating for that quite a bit, drug abuse, making sure that he helped stem that problem. And I always think there's been lots of other Muslim players, high-profile Muslim players. Liverpool already had one in Sadio Mane before he arrives. So what is it about him? And it's the fact that he was the one to never conceal any part of his identity. Obviously, there's the beard, there's his name, Muhammad, for the Prophet, there's his surname, Salah, which means prayer. There's all of these things that make him one of one in a way that, so to get back to Messi, what has Messi ever stood for, or what does he symbolize beyond? Messi puts the ball in the back of the net and he does it brilliantly, and can find a pass that no one else can see. Unreal, and he's done it for so long. Cristiano is popular. People say he donated. Yeah, lots of players who have lots of money donate. But what does he stand for? What is he symbolic of? Whose lives is he changing? And I know you say, oh, he scores lots of goals, made me happy, so he changed my life, but not in a fundamental sense, right? And that's why I think he's the answer. Well,
but also, I think the curiosity, I think, is a big part of this. That's, for instance, just little things like he's on social, he's at the London Museum, and he's happy to be sort of pictured there, albeit in a bit of a disguise as he goes down, but he's happy to tell the story even doing that. That's one of the things that I think is... He's curious about himself, he's curious about the world that he finds himself in, he's curious about other football, he's curious about the business of football, because he has to be, because he almost steps into it from Egypt, into the business of European football, and he's trying to work out how to do that. And he's trying to also find his sense of self through this, because within the book, one of the stories that you're telling is of literally just of someone growing up. The player who can sit with Arne Slot in the summer of 2024 and say, no, I think we should do it this way, is obviously different from the boy who comes out of Egypt. There's a couple of similarities in terms of the core of him, you know, but this book is, I think, it's actually a portrait of a person growing up and coming into themselves to where he finds himself now. Yeah.
One of the interesting things is in Egypt, you were never allowed to criticize a coach, question. The coach would say something, you just do it. Yep. There's no dialogue, nothing like that. There's no understanding. So if you can't actually work out why he wants you to do that, you just hard luck. Like there's no way to find out because you can't ask him. It was just not a done thing. When he goes to Switzerland, he still doesn't really have conversations with the coach because he's not knowing that that's a thing that happens. And then from there, he goes to Chelsea, Jose Mourinho's Chelsea, where Jose was so authoritative in a way that if you never said anything and stuff, he just thought you were weak and soft. But Mo had never had that culture of saying anything to the coach or asking And then when you look at him, you know, not afraid to say to Jurgen, no, don't speak to me like that. Or to sit down with Slot and say, no, I don't want to have more defensive responsibility. I want to have less. It shows that evolution in one sense, but it happens in so many ways.
Through the book, part of the story that you tell there, for instance, you mentioned the period when he goes to Europe, when he goes to Switzerland. Something I learned from the book that I had no sense of at all is that part of why that happens is he actually gets into an argument on live television with a senior director at his Egyptian club at the age of 19. I was knocked over by this, that he felt he ends up in this situation during at a point at which Egyptian football had to be pulled to a standstill because of a massacre. Ultimately, he argues there and then live and provides evidence to back himself up there and then live with the presenter that he has to go.
It's the most extraordinary thing because people who don't understand Egyptian football, especially back then at that stage, Egypt was the league in Africa. It would produce the CAF Champions League winners. It used to 9 out of 10 times be Al Ahly. It had lots of money. Players never moved out of Egypt. They didn't need to. They just stayed in the Egyptian league and they were seen as the best players on the continent. It had lots of money. The authority, like I said, you never questioned the coach, but you never dared question your club.
Yep.
And you'd only ever get to leave when they thought they didn't need you anymore or when they were going to get a big paycheck from either Zamalek or Al Ahly. And Salah is sitting there, the Port Said disaster has happened, the league is shuttered, no football can happen in Egypt. And he's got this opportunity to go to Switzerland. On live television, he's on a show and he's talking about, I've got this chance to go. So the presenter calls an executive from Arab Contractors and they say, no, there's no bid being made. Lo and behold, Mohammed's provided the producers of the show with the actual bid that was sent. So this proposal is, as this man is talking, saying, there's no bid, we've received nothing. The bid is flashing on the screen and the presenter's like, sorry, sir, we've got the proposal here. And Mo is saying, the sporting director is here, is waiting to negotiate. You guys said, you agreed a price, you told him to come, he's traveled, like we need to get this deal over the line. Then they're like, oh no, you see the problem is, not that there's no bid, the problem is it's too low. And he proceeded like, we at least need 3 times more. And Salah's like, no, you're going to kill my career. You're asking for too much money. I've hardly even played, I've not even been in the first team that long. I need to go. This is good for me. So he has this fight, and him doing that, as transgressive as it was, one of the translators who was working in the deal says, if he didn't do that, he probably doesn't go because they would frustrate the deal to the point of it just doesn't happen. But him doing that, like, decides his future then. that he has to go because they understand he's not going to sit there and put up with it. He just won't turn up.
Within this, that your story ends with him back at Liverpool. Obviously, we'll get on to where he's going to be next. But it goes back to you start at the end. You work back through his life, all the work that he's done through his time in Italy, which is absolutely fascinating, and so much of his own personal development arguably happens in that period in Italy. And then he returns back into Liverpool I think in this situation where he's determined to be himself, but I think that the club's worthy of enormous credit, and the manager at the time, because they create the room for him to be himself.
Yes.
And I think that is, there's a lot of things that Jurgen Klopp gets praised for, but I think one of the tricks that he managed to have was, whilst there was a lot of really quite stringent internal code of togetherness every 12 months that had to be seen, he very much wanted his players to express, at the very least, the better side of themselves, the better side of the humanity. I remember Trent Alexander-Arnold, feeding the homeless at Christmas, and that felt like the sort of thing that only happens when Jurgen's manager, not because Trent isn't that person, but because Jurgen helps create the circumstance where all of that can happen in that specific way. And it feels like one of Jurgen's aims was to create the room for this person who he meets, who he's very open that it was not his first choice to sign, for him to get to be the version of himself he wants to be.
Jurgen very much loved that his players represented something more, that they were not just footballers, that they had an idea of what was going on in the world, what was happening around them. He adored Mo for it. Every interview he ever gave about Salah, he would say, like, what an individual, like, look at how much he represents and how much he does and how much he means, and to keep performing for his people is like absolutely remarkable. And what I think people didn't understand as well about Jurgen, because obviously people just thought here's a guy who hugs a lot and has this huge laugh, and he was tactically excellent, but he was also socially super smart as well. And in that allowing to be players themselves in whatever form that took. So, for example, Dan Lovren, who Klopp knew had a big mouth, when he would then run that mouth, Klopp wouldn't penalize him heavy. He'd just say, hey, next time, just think about where you're saying it and what you're saying and how you're saying it. Like, I know that's you, I know that that's your personality, but just bear that in mind. Like, you can say something, I'm happy, but just remember what you say and what people will then turn it into will be two different things. And with Mo, I think he very much understood Mo's need to be loved, Mo's need to feel wanted, to feel important, because that's who Mo was outside of Liverpool, right? And I think we all that watched him here in the Premier League, you get into that balloon and bubble of just seeing him in the prism of Liverpool, whereas out of that, he's this huge, significant, gigantic figure. And he wanted to be that at Liverpool as well. And Jurgen knew that, and Jurgen played to that, and Jurgen cuddled that, which then allowed him to get the best out of himself and to feel free to just be.
Where he is now is fascinating. He's made the decision to go to Trabzonspor. I refuse to believe that was the richest offer on the table for Mo Salah.
It wasn't, yeah.
I refuse to believe it was possibly even the offer that might have had the greatest sense of possible immediate success. But I think this is very much an offer that has appealed to him on a personal level as a place he wants to go and play his football and a place he wants to go and live his life for a period of time. Is that fair? Is that the moment he's in now whilst wanting to still excel?
So the most expensive offers came from Saudi. The most your brand will be enhanced and the commercial opportunities you have, and you can be the next David Beckham, came from MLS. Those were the pitches. There were offers from elsewhere in Europe. What Mo wanted as a first basis, people assume, and I've seen this a lot on especially X, when he terminated his contract with Liverpool, he thought he's better than us, he's bigger than us, he's going to get a huge club. The reason the contract is terminated is because he doesn't feel wanted. He doesn't feel like the club value him as much in the sense of contributing.
Yeah.
That he's got a huge part to play in the silverware, that he wants to win for Liverpool. Because there's that feeling of they don't want me, I don't belong here anymore, it's better for them if I'm out of here and they can focus on that future that they want to build. What then he is looking for is feeling wanted, feeling like he can contribute on a big scale, feeling like he can provide meaning where he is that's greater than on-pitch meaning, because that's the trajectory of his career. And he'd always said he wanted to stay in Europe. Now, I know there was some romance about, oh, he should go back to Italy, but that appealed to us who've never played in Italy, right? He's already been there, done that there wasn't much appeal in that. And the other thing I found so interesting is people would say, oh, why didn't he just go and play a bit part role at Barcelona? Why didn't he just go and play a bit part role at Juve? People weren't saying that when Messi went to Inter. They weren't querying why he didn't choose somewhere else.
Well, he could have sat on a huge contract at Liverpool and played a bit part role.
Yeah.
That was literally the offer that was, or he may have felt that was the direction of travel, and maybe Liverpool might have intimated that was the direction of travel, but he could literally have had a huge contract at Liverpool, stayed there for one more year and been a bit part player.
Yeah, and I think people underestimate his need to provide value. Like, he doesn't want to just earn.
Yeah.
He wants to play football, and he wants to win things, and he wants to help you, and he wants to make his teammates better. And when you think of the kid that was at Chelsea, and he was getting the advice, don't leave here, what are you doing? You've come from Egypt in such a short space of time. You're at the Premier League, you're at Chelsea, the champions, Jose Mourinho. It doesn't matter if you're sitting on the bench, you've still made it, you're at Chelsea. And he's like, no, I want to play. I need to play. I need to provide meaning. I need to feel fulfilled. And if he can make that decision at that age, when people are telling him not to, some of his teammates were like, are you crazy?
Yeah, but it's also striking, it's, the funny thing about Trabzonspor is that they're not one of the most established Turkish clubs as well, and it feels like they might have offers on the table from some of them too. But almost this idea that even now, he's still got to go somewhere, grab a group who are off to one side and say, no, we're going to become the dominant force, please. But
is that not like the most Mo thing?
Yeah.
What were Liverpool when he joined?
Yeah, exactly.
They were not the biggest club. They were not the most, in terms of, at that moment.
Yeah.
They were not winners. They were wanting to build something, and he was like, yes, I will help you construct this, and we will have the best time together, and we'll be super successful. And it's the same thing.
It is the same thing. Listen, the book's fantastic. We've only really scratched the surface. Trust me, only really scratched the surface all the way through. Mel Reddy with Only Mo Salah. It is the absolute business. Do get it from wherever you'd get your books from at the drop of a hat. Lots of places that. We're literally in Waterstones right now. That's one option. Frankly, either actual shops or online, you can go to Waterstones. Huge thank you to them for having us and for having us tonight as well. But here it is. It is the absolute business. Only Mo Salah. Huge thank you to Mel. I'm not going to ask her what she's going to write next. She needs to have a break. And also, when you do the tours for these stuff, you think, oh my God, if I write another one, I'll ask me to do all this again. So thank you very much to her, and do check the book out.